Right, okay, so when you do this for real, you'll be given the project, so you won't have to do this part. But I'm just going to do console app, not net framework. Not that it really matters what we're doing here. So I'm just going to select that, give it a sensible name, and choose where to save it. Just going to dump it on the C drive, so it'll be quick. Remember, if you do things on the C drive, it is going to be quick. Right. Otherwise, you're using connected network drives, and that's going to be slower. So I'm just going to do. I'm going to call this one test class version or something, just so I've got a resource to look back at. Remember, all your own resources are up for grabs for looking at. So, you know, if you go, oh, I've done something like this before and I can just look it up. So we're not doing closed book tests. So there's a little warning from Microsoft that that's the one you should be picking, because we are going to do what we do and drop other frameworks. To be fair, the reason they're doing .core is because that's cross-platform. And .NET Framework had a load of things that were really hooked into Windows, so they had to move away from it all. Right, okay, so we've got a project. We're not worried about that project. So the first class. I had the document open a minute ago. Hang on, let's get it on that screen so I can show it. Right, so the first, what I'm going to do is just this fruit class. Okay, so I'm going to start, and I'm going to go back to Visual Studio. I'm just going to go project add class, because the one that you're going to get is going to have some classes already built, but you'll have to make your own. So I just want you to be happy with doing this. So I'm going to call it fruit, because that's what the documentation said. It defaults to the class selection. If it goes horrible wrong, just delete and start again. So I've got my class called fruit. The first thing I need to do, so that the testing framework works, is to make sure it's public. Otherwise it won't see it. Okay, so always make the classes public. Right, so I'm going to start off and I'm going to put the field data in. So I've got growing spot and name. So I need to put those in. They're private, they've got the little minuses, so they're private, remember. So I'm just going to say private, and I think these were both strings, so it's growing spot, and the other one was private. I've forgotten. Oh dear, my memory's terrible. Name. Name. Useless. There you go. Right, okay, so I've got my fields in there. Right, now I've got a constructor. Remember, you can see the constructor because it's the same name as the class. Right, I've got two, but I'm just gonna do the first one first. Okay, so constructors are always public. They do not have a return type because they return an object reference, so they don't need it. So I just put fruit and oh god, go back, name string. So I'm providing the name, and remember that on the class diagram the name is followed by the type, but when we're building it in C#, it's the opposite around. Okay, so I'm just gonna put that. I'm not gonna put any code in yet. I'm just putting the skeletons together. Okay, so that's the first one. The next one, add two parameters. So I can put a name and a growing spot when I create the fruit. So I'm just going to say public fruit again. This is the process called overloading. Okay, where we're using the same name for something, but we're providing different parameters. So it makes it consistent for the user of the class. So string name, and then it was the other one was growing spot. Okay, right, now, here's the thing with multiple constructors. We can duplicate code. So I could do this. So I could say, right, I want to store that name. They've given me the name, I'm going to store it in my private field. I must make sure, if I do that, the compiler's going to get confused. It's going to go, name equals name, what are you doing? What are you doing? So it goes green squiggle on me. What I actually mean is, I want to store it here, don't I? The parameter here. They've got the same name, and that's allowed. So to make sure that I mean the field, I put this dot. And then it goes, oh, okay, I know what you mean now. So you're storing the parameter value that was given. The reason they've done that is because it's what you end up having to do if you can't use the same name is start coming up with even more weirder names, and it just becomes a pain. Right? So I could do this, and then in this one, obviously I need to store that name again, and then I need to store growing spot. This dot growing spot. Use the picker all the time when you're doing these things, and we're going to store the parameter growing spot. Right, but obviously there's an issue there for maintainability in the future. What is that issue? What have I done that is like a cardinal sin? It's probably not a cardinal sin, but there you go.
You've got the same line of code inside.
I've duplicated, haven't I? I've got duplicate code. So if in the future I change something, I've got to remember to change it in 2 places. And that gets worse if you've got like 10 constructors. All right? Right, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to only add the difference. So this one is basically the full definition, isn't it? This one's like a minor one. So what I'm going to do is this. So watch carefully. I go this, and then I pass on that name value. I thought I did. Hang on a minute, I've screwed that up. Hang on. Can I call it? You know it can't. Oh, I'm being a div. Yeah, it can't call itself. That's going to be stupid. Hang on a minute. I'm being thick. Oh, it's been a long week already and it's on a Tuesday. Right, I do it the other way around. So, I've got additional information. I'll wake up eventually. And I do it like that. So I say, oh, there's some extra stuff here. I'll deal with that. But yeah, the name, whatever you were going to do with the name, I'll send that on to the basic constructor. So I've avoided the duplication. Okay? Obviously, if you do screw it up, like I just did, the compiler's there to actually go, yeah, do what, mate? You didn't mean to do that. It isn't wrong to do it the other way. I'm not going to, when you do the assessment, if you've got 2 or 3 constructors and you just duplicate code in there, I'm not going to slag you off for it. All right? I'm not asking for the world's most efficient code. I'm asking, can you implement a design? That's the key for this task. All right? But that's, that's one way of doing it. I like messing things up, especially when it's on a video, because then you can tell, oh yeah, I've done that as well, and if you do that same thing. Right, so that's the constructor part done. What else did we have on this document? Right, so we had a get name, so a getter for the name, so some public way of the user looking at the name. A setter, which is a way of validating name stuff, so we don't just let them put any old junk in, like exclamation mark for a name. And then the same for growing spot. So let's have a look. So this is a property. So properties I tend to put above my methods and the constructors. So it's public, because there was a little plus. So I'll do the name one first. So I'm going to call it with a capital N. So when we do private fields, we tend to just put lowercase. So we camel case those, but we Pascal case any properties. In general, you don't have to, it's just another one of those weird naming conventions. Okay, so I want to now put a get, so I'll do the get part first, and that's just going to, in this case, I'm going to keep expanding it out, but I don't need to necessarily. I'm just going to return the name. Okay, so they can look up the name of this fruit. But I'm also going to do, it said, set name as well. So I'm going to say set. So I'm going to do a setter, which we didn't do last time. So in this case, what I want to do is I want to store the name that they've given me. So in this case, I'm not going to put any validation on here at the minute. I do that. Value is the special name that is used to refer to a property that has been set, a value. I'll show you how that works in a second. Okay. So that is the structure of a setter. It's the same format. We say what data type are we setting, and then we use the keyword value to get access to the information. So I could actually rewrite my constructor to make use of that in case I do some validation in the future. All right, so instead of this line, I'm just going to comment that out. What I can now do is I can say name equals name. And that's how you use a setter. It's nice because you don't have to put, if I was doing it with a method, I'd have to do something like this. It'd be, oh yeah, pass the parameter to it. But with a setter, it gives you a nice, quicker way. It actually makes things sometimes more readable when you're doing expressions that involve these things. So they're quite handy. So we can use a setter like that. Okay. For completeness, I mean, you can put this, but actually, the compiler sometimes goes, you know what, you can simplify that, you don't need it. So it says, look, I'm moving over there, it says name can be simplified. So show potential fixes, remove this, you don't need it. In this case, there's no contradiction between name, uppercase N, with the parameter name. Okay. Right, so that's the first getter and setter, but I think I had another one to do. Yeah, one for growing spot as well. Okay, so I'm just going to do, I'm going to do it there so I can see my code, but I'm using the IntelliSense anyway. So this was another string value, and I'm going to call it growing spot, and it's going to have a getter, and let me show you a compact way of doing that. I'm going to just do the get on one line. So I'm going to say return growing spot, and then on the next line I'm going to say set. How you format that is up to you. If you're doing a load of code, it's probably better to expand the braces out. But if it's a one-liner, you'll often see getters and setters written like this. In fact, I have on occasion done it all on one line, if it was something quite short. So again, I'm just going to set growing spot is equal to the value. Okay. And that is the skeleton implementation of that class for fruit. I do like the way that Word does not like program code at all. It's really funny that. It's like, oh, shut up, Word. You stupid boy. Okay, anyone got any queries about that? I'll stop the vid there if no one's got any queries.